Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever stopped to wonder why someone can be so quick to call you when they're lonely, but vanish the moment you need them most? Why you're always the one making the effort, while they sit back and decide if you're worth their time? The truth is, when a man sees you as just an option, he'll keep you dangling, close enough to benefit from your love, but never close enough to give you the commitment you deserve. And the dangerous part? The longer you stay, the more you start to question your own worth. Today we're exposing the hidden signs that reveal when you're being treated as second best, and why walking away is the most powerful move you can ever make. And when someone suddenly disappears from your life without explanation, it can feel like the ground has been pulled from beneath you. One moment you're sharing conversations, moments, maybe even dreams, and the next there's silence. That silence is deafening, and it echoes in your chest like rejection carved into stone. But I want you to know something right now. Being ghosted is not a reflection of your worth, your beauty, your intelligence, or your value as a partner. It's not a mirror of who you are. It's a mirror of who they are. And the only response that wins in this situation is not chasing, not begging, not demanding answers from someone who chose to vanish. The only response that wins is standing in your power and refusing to diminish yourself for someone who couldn't even grant you the respect of a conversation. And it's tempting, I know. Your mind goes into overdrive, searching for reasons. You replay every interaction like an investigator trying to piece together a crime. Was it something I said? Was I too much? Not enough? Did I show too much interest? Not enough interest? You start bargaining with yourself, wondering if maybe, just maybe, if you reach out one more time, I'll respond and bring the closure you crave. But understand this, closure doesn't come from someone who abandoned the conversation. Closure comes from you deciding that you are not going to settle for someone who shows you through silence that they don't value your presence. And you see, when someone ghosts you, they reveal more about their emotional immaturity than about your desirability. Ghosting is the coward's way out. It's an avoidance of accountability, a refusal to communicate with honesty. And yet, too often we take it personally. We think, if only I had been better, they wouldn't have left. No. The truth is, someone who vanishes without explanation would have vanished no matter what version of you showed up, because their behavior isn't about you. It's about their lack of courage, their lack of clarity, and their lack of readiness for the kind of connection you deserve. And the only response that wins is silence. Not silence as a game, not silence as manipulation, but silence as an act of self-respect. When you refuse to chase after someone who disappears, you reclaim your power. You send the strongest message of all. I will not fight for space in the life of someone who doesn't value mine. That is strength. That is dignity. That is the posture of someone who knows their worth. And think about it. If you respond with anger, you give them energy. If you respond with pleading, you give them control. If you respond with endless questioning, you hand over your peace of mind. But when you respond by walking away with grace, you take back control of the story. You refuse to let their silence write your self-worth. You write it yourself by choosing to keep moving forward. And yes, it hurts. Rejection always stings, even when it comes in the form of silence. But pain is not the enemy here. Pain is a teacher. It shows you where you placed your expectations, how invested your heart, and where you now have an opportunity to rise higher. The sting of ghosting is the universe's way of pulling someone out of your path who was never meant to go the distance with you. The silence that feels so cruel is, in reality, a redirection, a clearing of space for someone who has the courage to stay, to speak, to commit. And the most powerful thing you can do when someone ghosts you is to stop romanticizing their absence. Don't turn their silence into a mystery you need to solve. Don't elevate their withdrawal into something that makes them seem more desirable. Instead, see it for what it is, a glaring sign that they weren't aligned with the life and love you are building. And when you see it clearly, you can walk away without bitterness, without resentment, just a quiet confidence that says, thank you for showing me who you are, because now I don't have to waste another moment pretending you're someone different. And your future doesn't hinge on the person who ghosted you. It doesn't hinge on the unanswered text or the call that never came. Your future is being built in the way you respond to this moment. And if your response is to shrink, to beg, to obsess, then you hand your power away. But if your response is to rise, to detach, to reclaim your time and energy, then you win every single time. And there's an elegance in not reacting. There's a quiet strength in not explaining yourself to someone who doesn't care enough to listen. There's a beauty in moving forward without looking back, without needing validation from the very person who withheld it. Imagine the statement you make to yourself when you choose not to send that extra message, when you resist the urge to demand answers, when you simply close the door and walk away. You're saying, I am my own closure. I am my own validation. I am enough as I am. And anyone who cannot see that is simply not meant to be part of my story. And then here's the truth. The right person will never ghost you. The right person won't leave you wondering where you stand, won't disappear when things get real, won't run from the responsibility of communication. The right person shows up. They call, they care, they don't make you chase. So if someone has ghosted you, that is the clearest proof that they are not the one. And what a gift that clarity is, even if it comes wrapped in disappointment. And so the next time someone vanishes, let them go. Don't chase. Don't explain. Don't lower yourself to the level of begging for the bare minimum. Stand tall. Keep your silence. And then turn your energy inward toward the things and people who nourish your soul, who give you energy instead of draining it, who choose you openly and consistently. That is the only response that wins, not because it punishes them, but because it protects you. And every time you choose silence over desperation, you grow stronger. Every time you refuse to beg for scraps of attention, you build a deeper relationship with yourself. And every time you let go of someone who couldn't even send a goodbye, you make space for someone who will never stop saying hello. And that is the real victory. That is the only response that wins. And when you allow yourself to internalize the message that their silence sends, you shift from asking, why did they leave, to declaring, why would I ever want to keep someone who couldn't even stay? That shift is everything, because when you're ghosted, it's not about getting them back. It's about getting yourself back, getting back your focus, your energy, your sense of self-worth that was momentarily shaken by someone who didn't deserve to hold it in the first place. And the truth is, chasing after someone who has ghosted you is like running after a mirage. You think you're heading toward water, but the closer you get, the more you realize there's nothing there. The illusion keeps you stuck in cycles of self-doubt and false hope, draining you of your confidence. And the cruelest part, the longer you chase, the less of yourself you have left to give to the people who are actually present, the ones who are truly capable of loving you. That's why the only response that wins is not to run after ghosts, but to walk boldly toward reality, the reality where your value isn't up for negotiation, where your time isn't wasted on vanishing acts. And when you stop chasing, something profound happens. You create space for clarity. You start to see that the one who ghosted you didn't steal your power. You gave them access to it when you believed their absence meant something about you. By pulling back and refusing to engage, you take that power back. You become the one who decides the story, not them. And when you decide the story, the narrative changes from I wasn't good enough for them to they weren't strong enough to handle me. And think about it this way. Every time you pick up your phone and feel the urge to text them, to send that just checking in message, you're placing your self-esteem in their hands. You're gambling with your peace of mind, hoping they'll suddenly validate you. But every time you put the phone down, every time you resist the temptation, you're reinforcing your own self-respect. You're telling yourself, I don't need their acknowledgement to confirm my worth. I already know who I am. That's not just strength, that's liberation. And then let's be honest, if someone has ghosted you, do you really want them back? Do you really want to invite someone into your life who thinks silence is an acceptable form of communication? When you look at it through the lens of self-respect, the answer becomes clear. Wanting them back is like inviting disrespect to sit at your dinner table and asking it to pass the salt. No. You deserve better company. You deserve someone who not only shows up, but keeps showing up day after day with making you question their presence. And the most powerful part of responding with silence is that it's not about revenge. It's not about making them wonder where you've gone or hoping they'll regret losing you. That's not winning. That's still tying your value to their reaction. The real win is when your silence is for you. When your silence is a boundary, a shield, a reminder that your peace is not up for grabs. You don't need them to regret it. You don't need them to come back and apologize. You need only to choose yourself. And then when you do, you'll notice something incredible. Life starts opening up in ways it never did before. Because now you're not spending hours analyzing their last message or waiting for their name to pop up on your screen. Instead, you're using that time to build yourself, to nurture your passions, to deepen the connections with people who actually care. You realize that their silence gave you a gift, the gift of time you can now reinvest in yourself. And when you pour into yourself, you become someone so grounded, so fulfilled, that the next time someone even thinks about playing games with you, you won't even flinch. You'll see the red flag immediately, and instead of questioning your worth, you'll simply say, "Not for me," and move on with ease. And this is where the transformation happens. It's not in wishing they'd come back, but in realizing you never needed them in the first place. The strength you find in yourself after being ghosted is like steel forged in fire. It's painful at first, but it creates a resilience that no one can take from you. You start to recognize that the right person is not the one who disappears, but the one who stays when it's inconvenient, the one who chooses honesty over avoidance, presence over absence. And until that person shows up, you choose yourself. And every single time you choose not to respond to someone who ghosted you, you train your mind and heart to align with your highest standards. You create a new habit of self-worth. Instead of spiraling into self-blame, you remind yourself, I am the prize, I am the standard. If they couldn't see it, that's their loss, not mine. That repetition builds a fortress of confidence around you, and soon ghosting no longer feels like rejection, it feels like redirection. And let's get practical. When you're ghosted, here's what you do. First, acknowledge your feelings. Don't suppress the hurt, because pretending you're unaffected only prolongs the wound. Feel it, process it, but don't stay there. Second, resist the urge to chase. Delete the draft message, stop stalking their social media, and remind yourself that chasing someone who has already left is the fastest way to abandon yourself. Third, redirect your focus. Take that energy and pour it into your life. Work on your health, your goals, your friendships, your dreams. Ghosting is painful, yes, but it can also be the spark that reignites your relationship with yourself. And when you do these things, you don't just survive ghosting, you thrive because of it. You turn what was meant to diminish you into fuel for growth. And the beauty of this process is that it sets you up for something greater. The more you choose self-respect in the face of rejection, the more magnetic you become. You exude confidence, independence, and strength. You stop looking like someone waiting to be chosen and start looking like someone who has already chosen themselves. That is irresistible energy, the kind that attracts people who recognize your value and respect it. And let me tell you this, the silence you choose will speak louder than any words you could send. While they may move on and never look back, or maybe one day realize what they lost, it won't matter to you. Because your silence wasn't for them, it was for you. It was your declaration that you're done lowering your standard, that you're done waiting for someone to validate you, that you're done giving power to people who can't even respect the basic decency of communication. And so when you're ghosted, remember, your power isn't in getting them to explain or in pulling them back or in proving your worth to them. Your power is in choosing yourself so completely that their silence no longer has the power to define you. It's in holding your head high, taking the lesson and moving forward with more strength, more clarity and more self-respect than you had before. And because at the end of the day, the only response that wins is not the one they'll notice, it's the one you'll feel. The response that makes you proud when you look in the mirror. The response that makes you realize you've outgrown the version of yourself that would have begged for attention. The response that sets you free from the cycle of needing answers and instead gives you the freedom to create a life that doesn't depend on anyone else's validation. And that's where the real victory lies. And then when you step into that freedom, you begin to notice something incredible. You're no longer waiting for someone else to decide your value. You've already decided it for yourself. That decision becomes the anchor that keeps you steady no matter who stays or who leaves. Ghosting no longer has the ability to send you spiraling because you understand that the only people who disappear without explanation are the ones too fragile to stand in the presence of real connection. And fragility is not what you're searching for. You're searching for depth, for honesty, for consistency, for love that doesn't vanish at the first sign of responsibility. And here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Ghosting is often the best filter you'll ever experience. Why? Because it eliminates people who never had the capacity to meet you where are. It shows you in the clearest way possible who is unfit to hold the space you deserve. It hurts, yes, but it's also clarity disguised as rejection. Imagine if the person who ghosted you stayed longer, just long enough for you to get even more attached, only to disappear later. The pain would be deeper, the confusion heavier, but instead they revealed their character early. That's not something to regret. That's something to be thankful for, even if it feels brutal in the moment. And what makes ghosting so disorienting isn't just the silence, it's the way it interrupts your story. You thought you were writing a chapter with this person, and suddenly the pen was ripped out of your hand. But the secret is this: the story was never theirs to write in the first place. It's always been yours. And when you understand that, you realize their absence doesn't end your chapter. It just shifts the direction. You pick the pen back up and keep writing stronger than before. And this is why the only response that wins is silence. Not because silence punishes them, but because silence protects you. Every word you don't send, every explanation you don't chase, every plea you withhold, it's all energy that stays with you instead of being poured into a void. And that energy becomes the foundation of your growth. You start using it to invest in the things that actually create a better life. Your passions, your career, your friendships, your health. You realize you've been given a gift, the chance to redirect your focus onto the one person who truly deserves it, you. And let's go deeper here. Why do so many people feel devastated when they're ghosted? It's because ghosting scratches at one of our deepest fears, the fear of not being enough. Silence makes us think, if I was truly enough, they wouldn't have left. But that's a lie. The truth is, someone who disappears without warning isn't leaving because you weren't enough. They're leaving because they weren't equipped to handle what you brought to the table. And when you internalize this truth, you stop blaming yourself for their weakness. You stop carrying responsibility that was never yours to hold. And there's a different kind of strength that comes when you learn how to let go without closure. It's one of the most difficult lessons, but also one of the most liberating. Closure doesn't come from their explanation. It comes from your decision to stop waiting for one. It comes from saying, I don't need to understand why you left to move forward. My life isn't on hold until you give me reasons. I create my own closure by walking away. That mindset is power. That mindset is independence. That mindset ensures you'll never again be at the mercy of someone else's silence. And the more you embrace this, the more you notice your standards rising. You no longer give your energy freely to anyone who can't match it. You no longer cling to people just because they once made you feel wanted. You begin to require consistency, reliability, and honesty. And here's the beautiful part. When you demand those qualities, you attract them. You teach people how to treat you by what you accept, and by not accepting ghosting, by not chasing it, by not allowing it to define you, you send the clearest message possible. If you want access to me, you need to be real. You need to be present. You need to communicate. That kind of energy shifts the entire dynamic of your relationships. And think about the kind of life that opens up for you when you choose not to waste your energy on ghosts. Instead of checking your phone every 5 minutes, you're building your future. Instead of replaying conversations in your head, you're pouring yourself into growth. Instead of wondering what went wrong, you're focusing on what's next. That shift is the difference between living in reaction to someone else's actions and living in alignment with your own vision. And then here's something worth remembering. When someone ghosts you, they think they've ended the connection on their terms. But what they don't realize is that you still have the final word, not with what you say to them, but with how you choose to move forward. Do you collapse under the weight of their silence, or do you rise with dignity and strength? The answer to that question determines not just how you heal from this one experience, but how you approach every relationship moving forward. And the way you carry yourself after being ghosted teaches you more about who you are than the relationship itself ever could. Are you someone who begs for answers or someone who creates them for yourself? Are you someone who chases shadows or someone who turns toward the light of your own path? Every choice you make in the wake of silence shapes your identity. And when you choose strength, you create a version of yourself who no longer fears rejection, but sees it as redirection. And remember, people who ghost are showing you the level of connection they're capable of. If they can't even manage a text, what makes you think they could handle the depth of love, communication, and vulnerability you truly deserve? Their silence isn't the loss, it's the evidence. Evidence that they weren't ready. Evidence that they weren't worthy of the role you might have given them. And once you accept that evidence, you stop grieving the fantasy of who you thought they were and start embracing the truth of who you are. And this is where the empowerment lies. Not in changing them, but in elevating yourself. Not in hoping they'll return, but in knowing you've outgrown the need for them to. And as you keep walking forward, you realize something profound. The best response to ghosting isn't just silence, it's success. It's building a life so full, so rich, so unapologetically aligned with your worth that the thought of chasing someone who disappeared feels laughable. Because why would you chase what has no value when you, A, surrounded by opportunities, by people, by experiences that are ready to embrace you fully? And so the next time you're tempted to break the silence, to reach out, to try and make sense of the senseless, pause, ask yourself, do I want to hand over my power or do I want to keep it? Because every message you don't send, every call you don't make, every explanation you don't demand, that's you keeping your power. That's you practicing self-respect. That's you building a stronger, wiser, more resilient version of yourself who doesn't just survive rejection, but thrives beyond it. And that right there is the ultimate response, the one that leaves no room for doubt, the one that makes you proud of who you are, the one that ensures you'll never again confuse someone else's silence with your value, the one that always, always wins. And when you finally reach that point where silence feels more natural than chasing, something inside of you begins to shift. You no longer look at their absence as an open wound that needs to be closed, but as a doorway you walk through that led to your own strength. That doorway takes you to a new version of yourself, one that doesn't bend for temporary attention or collapse under the weight of someone else's avoidance. It takes you to the version of you that has learned the rarest and most powerful lesson. You are whole, even when someone chooses not to show up. And that wholeness changes everything. It changes the way you carry yourself in conversations because you're not afraid of silence anymore. It changes the way you approach relationships because you're not afraid of someone leaving. It changes the way you see rejection because you know rejection isn't proof of your inadequacy, it's proof of your clarity. And once you start seeing rejection as clarity, you start to welcome it. Because every time someone exits your life through, ghosting, you see it as one less person to distract you from the one who will actually stay. And think about how powerful it is to no longer be afraid of people leaving, to no longer live with the anxiety that someone disappearing means you've lost your worth. Imagine waking up each day with the confidence that you can handle silence, because silence no longer breaks you, it fortifies you. That's the gift ghosting unknowingly hands you. It gives you the practice of standing firm when someone else fails to. It gives you the opportunity to learn how to close your own doors. And so many people get stuck in the spiral of overthinking, asking, what did I do wrong? But the real power comes when you flip the question. Not what did I do wrong, but what did they reveal about themselves? That shift takes you out of blame and places you in wisdom. You're no longer dissecting your every move. You're evaluating their ability to be present. And from that perspective, the conclusion is simple. They revealed they weren't capable of the kind of connection you're looking for. That isn't a reflection of your lack, it's a reflection of their limits. And here's the beautiful irony. The less you respond, the more your absence speaks. Your silence becomes the mirror that forces them to see themselves. Maybe they'll avoid it. Maybe they'll never admit it. Maybe they'll bury it under excuses. But none of that matters because your silence isn't for them. It's for you. It's the quiet reminder that you don't chase, you don't beg, you don't lower yourself for crumbs of attention. You choose stillness. And in that stillness, you find your own voice again. And now let's talk about that urge to reach out one last time. You know the one. The late night temptation to send a message just to get an answer, any answer. That urge is natural, but here's the truth. Sending that message won't give you what you think it will. Even if they respond, the answer will never feel satisfying because the issue isn't their silence. It's the lack of alignment between the two of you. A response doesn't change that. A response doesn't turn someone unreliable into someone reliable. A response doesn't transform cowardice into courage. The only thing a response does is prolong your attachment to someone who's already shown you their truth. And that's why silence is the ultimate act of letting go. It's not passive. It's not weakness. It's the strongest decision you can make because it demands discipline. It demands that you sit with the discomfort instead of trying to fix it. It demands that you trust yourself enough to believe you can handle the unanswered questions. And every time you do, you grow. You become more self-assured, more independent, more resilient. You become the kind of person who doesn't crumble when faced with uncertainty because you've learned how to create certainty inside yourself. And this resilience doesn't just heal you from ghosting, it prepares you for the future. It makes you sharper in recognizing red flags, quicker in walking away from inconsistency, firmer in your boundaries. You start spotting patterns earlier. You stop wasting time trying to convince someone of your value because you know your value isn't up for negotiation. That awareness saves you years of heartache, years of wasted energy, years of chasing the wrong people. And then what happens when you stop chasing the wrong people? You finally make space for the right ones. The ones who don't make you question where you stand. The ones who don't disappear when things get real. The ones who match your effort, your energy, your honesty. You'll notice them more easily because your silence has tuned you to a new frequency, the frequency of respect, presence, and alignment. And because you've learned how to sit with silence, you won't mistake inconsistency for passion anymore. You'll know the difference. And another thing to remember, ghosting doesn't diminish your story. Your story is bigger than someone else's inability to communicate. Your story is about resilience, about how you responded, about how you chose to rise instead of collapse. Your story is about how you turned silence into strength. That's the chapter worth remembering, not the fleeting presence of someone who didn't have the courage to stay. And there's also freedom in realizing you don't need to teach someone how to value you. If they disappear, that's their lesson to learn, not your job to teach. Too often we make the mistake of thinking we can change someone by proving our worth, by showing them we're irreplaceable. But the truth is, someone who doesn't see your value on their own isn't going to see it just because you try harder. And the right person won't need convincing in the first place. They'll recognize it from the start and treat you accordingly. And so when ghosting happens, remind yourself that you're not losing someone essential. You're shedding someone incapable. And with every shedding, you become lighter, freer, more in tune with yourself. That is the gift buried in the pain. That is why silence wins. Because silence says, I know who I am. I don't need you to confirm it. I don't need you to explain yourself. I don't need you to return. I am enough as I am, and I will not settle for anything less than someone who proves they see that too. And it takes courage to choose silence. It takes courage to resist the temptation to reach out. It takes courage to walk away without answers. But every act of courage compounds. Each moment you stay silent strengthens the muscle of self-respect. Each time you let go without explanation, you build resilience. Each time you choose not to chase, you prove to yourself that you're capable of moving forward. And one day you'll look back and realize that ghosting didn't break you, it built you. It made you stronger, wiser, and more powerful than before. And that is the hidden victory, not the return of the person who ghosted you, not the apology they might one day send, not the regret they might eventually feel. The hidden victory is in the transformation of you. The hidden victory is in the way you walk taller, the way you love yourself harder, the way you refuse to settle for less than what you truly deserve. And once you've tasted that kind of strength, you'll never give it up again. You'll never chase someone who disappears, because you'll know the only response that ever wins is the one that keeps your dignity intact and your heart moving forward.